How did the Seattle Mariners look in their first game of spring training? Plus, Jerry Dipoto cooks us up another word salad. That's all coming up on this episode of Bleav in Mariners. What is up, sports fans? What's up, Mariners fans out there? Of course, baseball is really officially back. We finally got some live game action under our belts. I'm taping this on a late Friday evening. Apologize for the late Friday episode. Just a busy day. After a very busy week of spring training, the Mariners signing a notable piece to a minor league deal with a spring training invite. We'll get into that. Of course, they played their first real game against who else but the San Diego Padres, their true rival of spring training and the team that they share their spring training complex with in Peoria, Arizona. And of course, Jerry Dipoto managing to embarrass himself on a microphone again. Can you believe it? I can, and I'm sure you can too. Welcome on into this latest episode of Bleav in Mariners. I'm Jordon Schultz, more affectionately known as Schultzy, a Pacific Northwest talk show host from Portland, Oregon. Loving getting into this podcast. Did it basically at the end of last season, now to start this season in 2025. Excited to grow the community, maybe get some other podcasters on for interviews, some of the Seattle media on for interviews, reaching out to a lot of those people, and just excited to get into the latest spring training Mariners news for this episode. Of course, got to get my reaction to what Jerry Dipoto said. This was an interview on KJR that he did earlier in the week, Thursday morning, actually. And a lot of people were up in arms in social media about it. And I was up in arms about some specific comments that I actually wanted to play. I wanted to show the receipts here, and I'll react exactly to what Jerry Dipoto said and why I am not too happy about some of the things that he said. Of course, when are Mariners fans happy with some of the things that he says? But we'll get into all of that after I remind y'all of the giveaways going on this podcast. Of course, trying to hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. And when we do, we're going to give away this Topps Chrome rookie Andres Muñoz signed card, a really good one. I think it's right around like what, 10, 15, 20 bucks, depending on where you get it. But I know a Mariners fan would love to have that signed rookie card from Muñoz. It's in a Padres uniform, but still looking great. And then once we hit, it is hoping to get to 100 5-star ratings on the Apple Podcast service. We're going to be giving away have it upside down there on the YouTube, giving away a 2019 Topps Transcendent Edgar Martinez autographed card numbered to 25. So make sure you are in on the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. If you're watching this right now, really appreciate it if you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button to the channel. But we'll be giving a couple of these away, and I'll be giving a couple more things away along with them. Just wanted to try to incentivize people to listen to the program. Excited to get some more listeners on and grow the community, like I was saying. And I will announce once we hit 100 subscribers and once we hit 100 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, what we're doing for a giveaway. It'll be like a live stream fun, maybe like during a Mariners game or something like that as the season goes along. All right, but lots to get to, so let's dive right into first the Mariners' first spring training game of 2025. And I must say, kind of went to be expected, right? Or as you expected, 5-2, the loss for the Mariners. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh my gosh, the Mariners didn't play well in this game, so they're going to have a terrible season and things that we've been saying are going to come true. I'm not taking that angle, all right, but it is pretty hilarious in this 5-2 loss how it went down for Seattle. They did not get a hit in their first 5 innings of action. That was pretty hilarious to see, not going to lie. A lot of people on social media were making the easy, low-hanging jokes about that, including myself. Blake Hunt was the guy that broke up the no-hitter in the 6th. I can't believe I'm actually saying that for the Padres. It was a combined no-hitter at that point, but Hunt getting the first base hit for the Mariners, one of the possible backup catchers on the roster. And then Samad Taylor, again, for the second season in a row, later on in the game, in the 9th, actually, ending the Mariners' offensive day with a home run and starting the Mariners' home runs off for the spring, just like he did last year. Samad Taylor actually hit the first home run in spring training in 2024, so repeating that here this season. But other than that, not really much on the offensive side for Seattle. J.P. Crawford did get a run batted in off of a sacrifice fly. I think it was like in the 2nd or 3rd inning, Tyler Locklear got hit by a pitch. Then Austin Shenton drew a walk. They got a double steal on, which, I mean, with these shorter base pass and bigger bases, you see guys like Locklear, you see guys like Rowdy able to get a stolen base or two in here. And maybe that's going to be part of the Mariners strategy, even sending those big guys to run. But they were able to get a run out of that, able to play small ball. So I will try to look at the positives here and say, hey, they were able to do those things, but still lost 5-2 because of a Jonathan Diaz giving up a home run to Manny Machado in the very first inning, putting him down 2-0 pretty early. And from there, it really wasn't happening for Seattle. But once again, not too concerned with the result, just pretty laughable that they were down, and not only down, but did not get a hit for the first 5 innings. Just unbelievable there, but at the same time, totally believable. So Seattle Mariners, I tweeted this out in response to, I think, Trident True on X, just saying like, yeah, it is the most Mariners thing ever if they get no hit in a game in spring training. It is just absolutely insane. And a couple of the at-bats that I saw, obviously liking Samad Taylor getting into one again. I don't get to watch them up close and in person as much as maybe some of the other guys that live closer to Seattle, but I've always liked Samad Taylor. Thought he had a little bit of a decent swing as well as some speed, and they took him off the 40-man roster this offseason. So I think he got one game of action last year outside. No, he didn't even get a September call-up now that I'm thinking about it. He got one game of action in the second or third week of the year, and I think he went 2 for 4, 2 for 5 in one game, and that was it. And the Mariners didn't want to use him. And when I see guys like that providing a little bit of a spark and not being used, I do wonder why. But Samad Taylor with a home run again, so nice to see that. And other than that, I guess the double steal was nice. You don't really have much to write home about as far as Ryan Bliss doing anything. He went 0 for 2. Mitch Garver had a strikeout. That wasn't pretty. Hopefully we don't see much more of that. But I guess, the positives to lean on, the small ball that J.P. Crawford was able to play along with the double steal the Mariners got. But they still lose to the Padres 5-2. And not really any appearances, I don't think, that we're going to see from pitchers on the opening day roster. Maybe one or two might pop up throughout the season. One that got 2/3 of an inning today, but gave up a hit and 2 walks was Cody Bolton. We saw him on the roster a little bit last season. So the Mariners bullpen most likely fairly decided. There might be one spot up for grabs, but not really seeing anybody on the pitching side that we're going to see on the roster unless it gets to a severe need for depth. But once again, the Mariners spring training opener losing 5-2. We'll see how they do this weekend. I'm sure you're listening to this podcast not only on Friday, but on Saturday or Sunday as they're playing a couple of more games. And they really don't matter, but just got to point out how laughable it is that they did go 5 innings without a freaking hit. How Mariners is that? Moving on to another bit of Mariners news before we get into my reaction from Jerry Dipoto's interview on 93.3 KJR in Seattle. I'm sure a lot of people are still pretty testy about that. Mariners making a little signing, bringing in Rowdy Tellez, first baseman, a big old left-handing hitting first baseman, basically a clone of Daniel Vogelbach, bringing him in on minor league deal with an invite to spring training. He's basically a first baseman and a DH. That's it. He's a lefty and has had some success hitting the ball over the fence in Major League Baseball, has hit for average a couple of different times in his career, but really it was really small samples, like his rookie year and then in 2020 in a pandemic shortened season or when his averages are up. But usually anywhere from a 220 to a 240 hitter, he'll bop for you. Reminds you of a Mike Ford and essentially what Daniel Vogelbach offered you. And since he is so limited, it kind of makes sense that that's why the Mariners are signing him to, not necessarily a major league contract, but a deal with an invite to spring training in the minors. Of course, his biggest season overall home run wise was in 2022, 35 bombs, 89 ribbies. He slugged 461 and an OPS of 767. Last season in Pittsburgh, that was with the Milwaukee Brewers, by the way. Last season in Pittsburgh, not as great. Didn't get as much playing time, though, but basically the more average season of his career, I think, and what you could expect from him if he did get any at-bats for the Mariners. 13 home runs last year, 56 runs batted in, and a 253 batting average, good for a 0.4 WAR in the negative. So you essentially are looking at him as a depth signing, right? I mean, Luke Raley, already a left-handed guy at first base, basically forced into being the everyday first baseman or one part of a platoon, supposedly with Donovan Solano, because the outfield's full, the designated hitter spot going to probably be giving guys, like Rayleigh, guys like Garver, unfortunately, at bats as well. They'll probably be spelling guys in the outfield, and that's just one frustrating thing after another, and why I do think that Jerry Dipoto is kind of selling us short when he's talking to the media and talking to fans, as I'll get into here in a sec with his comments on 93.3 KJR and reacting to that. But Rowdy Tellez, essentially a depth piece. I mean, you hope that he can bop. I think it's also a very Seattle Mariners type of thing that we have to get excited for a piece like this. Not many other teams bringing a guy like this and are looking at him as oh yeah, something's gonna happen. He's gonna do really well. I'm sure he's gonna help the ball club. God, I'm so sick of being this mid-market freaking thought process type of team. I know we're not the Yankees, all right? I know we're not the Dodgers, and I'm sure Rowdy Tellez is a nice guy. And you can't not look at a 270-pound man walking in, going to hit in the batting cage. Does that translate to success on the field for the Mariners? I don't know, but hey, all right, Mariners made a fun signing. We'll see if he can affect the roster at all. But yeah, more likely than not. And hey, maybe this is a backup plan if things don't go right with Mitch Garver, right? I'd be okay with that. More likely than not, that's when we're going to see Rowdy Tellez, or if somebody goes down. But I actually don't hate this signing. I don't super love it, but I think that Rowdy Tellez is somebody that is going to offer some depth to Seattle, basically a platoon guy. And he can offer some pop on the left side of the plate if it's a righty on the mound. And that's that. So, yeah, like I said, decent signing. He's going to be 30 during this spring, and we'll see if he's able to make his mark here in Seattle and outplay a guy like Mitch Garver. And I don't know how soon the Mariners might make a move on somebody like that. Say Mitch Garver isn't playing well. I don't know if they're going to wait and try to push it through June, July because of how much they're paying him, or like a Mitch Haniger, for instance, if he's not hitting. It's kind of a valuable roster spot being taken up at that point. I know he's making $15+ million, but if he's not hitting and the Mariners are supposedly trying to compete for a playoff spot, you can't just keep him on the roster. And maybe at that point you move on to a bat like Tellez. So yeah, essentially maybe we will see him in the middle of the season. But I guess you kind of hope you don't. You want things to go right for Seattle. You want Jerry Dipoto's plan to work. But Rowdy Tellez coming on in. Big presence for the Mariners, size-wise, and at the plate, at least hitting home runs. And we'll see if he can make a difference for Seattle in 2025. All right, got to get into what I'm sure many people have been waiting for. My reaction to Jerry Dipoto's latest freaking word salad. He cooked us up something special on 93.3 KJR on Thursday morning. Chuck and Buck down there live at spring training doing an on-site interview with Jerry Dipoto. And Dipoto, I'll tell you what, said some things that ruffled my skirt a little bit and actually sent some people up in arms on social media as well. Some things possibly, I looked at it and then listened back to the interview. It looks like some things did get misquoted by a certain Seattle media member. I don't want to get into that. What I do want to get into is the couple of comments that I found that were super frustrating to me. And I wanted to play those exact comments and tell you why I don't think Jerry Dipoto is correct and why I think it's bad news for the Seattle Mariners fans and the organization that we're still hearing this approach being preached and that the reasons being given just don't add up for me. And I've got a clip as well following the 2021 offseason, comments that he made about increasing payroll, just kind of showing the receipts of Jerry saying other things in the past and then moving on to say something completely different now and how frustrating it is to be a Seattle Mariners fan. All right, but let's start out. Dipoto, I will try to give him some credit here. He did go into his philosophy and why he thinks this team can be good. But he also, in my opinion, stepped in it when he said that this team, and this is a direct quote from him, we'll play this clip, says that this team is spending more money now than they ever have.
Go back to what we did at the end of the 2018, headed into the 2019 season. At that point, we decided we were going to step back, rebuild our organization, and set ourselves up to be a sustainable contender. And for 2 years, we rebuilt our roster. In the 4 years since, we have built a sustainable, competitive roster. We're not growing our payroll at a rate that is, that is acceptable to the listening public in some way, we have grown it year over year. This is now since 2021. We're one of just 2 teams in Major League Baseball who's grown our payroll each year. That's unique. We've just not grown it as fast as people would like us to grow it, and we've grown it in a different way than people want us to grow. At least that's my sense. I think the expectation is that we go out and pour it out on free agents. Our preference is to develop from within, to invest in our own players, and to build that way. We're not working on a low payroll. We're working on one of the largest payrolls in team history. We continue to look to invest in our players.
I mean, I guess by the letter of what Jerry Dipoto is saying here, as far as the team increasing payroll from year to year, technically outside of the drop down, after the 2018-2019 season into 2020 and 2021, when they basically were just giving young guys a chance to play at the major league level. I mean, yes, technically from that point, the Mariners have been getting a little bit more added to their salary every single year, right? Their payroll has grown, not exponentially though, by little bits. I mean, it's like telling your kids, like, hey, like they ask you, hey, can I have some more? Like you ask for like another cookie, and they say, sure, we'll give you another cookie, but it's like the tiniest cookie that you could find. It's not like the full-size cookie that your kids were imagining that they were going to get. And I think when Mariners fans hear Jerry Dipoto say that we're increasing payroll, they hear, and I hear this too, and I visualize it too, that they're spending an exponential more amount of money. They're spending 10 to 20 plus more $1 million in an off season than they did last season. And that's just not the freaking case. It's down to semantics, and the Mariners have kind of edged it up to, 3 million more, 5 million more, 6 million more, a couple of million more than the last season. And they frankly haven't gotten up into the upper echelons of baseball payroll wise in the last 5 seasons at all. They've always been in the lower half. So if Jerry Dipoto is freaking claiming, and I've got the stats right here for you, 21st in payroll in the 2020 season, 21 season, they were 25th, 22 season, 22nd, 23 season, 18th, 24 season, 17th, and they're probably going to be hanging around near the same spot. So if Jerry Dipoto is sitting there and saying that they're spending more money than they ever have at his organization, and they are still in the bottom half of MLB salaries and payrolls, that is delusion. And there's no way that I'm assuming at this point that Jerry Dipoto's being hamstrung and his hands are being tied, because there is no way that somebody can actually believe that they, with the, and I'm not saying that bad teams are always teams that don't have guys that are highly paid on them, all right? Playoff teams with low payrolls happen. The Guardians had a very low payroll, gone to the playoffs. The Brewers, the Royals, the Tigers, they were all competing or got into the playoffs last year with super low payrolls. But this isn't a team that's just trying to get into the playoffs. This is a team that has an elite starting pitching staff, right? We've talked about it a lot on Bleav in Mariners. We've talked about it everywhere on any kinds of Mariners podcasts or content that you could get. There is a window, and Seattle is wasting that window, essentially trying to say, we believe that we want to invest in these players here right now. We don't want to add from the outside. And saying that they're spending more than ever, and then in the same interview turning around and saying that they're also spending it not on free agents, but on the guys within their organization, that's all well and good. But you still, after this offseason, even after the last offseason, even after signing pieces like Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco, the Mariners were still a position short to start the season last year. Randy Arozarena wasn't on the roster to start the year. They were basically an outfielder down. They were still looking at at-bats that were being wasted early in the season, even if Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco worked out, and they didn't. So way more at-bats were being wasted, and that's what keeps happening. And we keep waiting for these moves to come every other offseason. And you know what? To Dipoto's credit again, he did go out and try to trade for Jorge Polanco last year. He did try to go out and grab Mitch Garver in free agency last year, but it just didn't work. And it seems like you're doubling down. But it might just be like fans being out of sync with what they believe the Mariners should be doing. But I don't know if you view the midseason acquisitions last year of Victor Robles and Randy Arozarena. And Victor Robles, guys, was so lucky. That was like the Mariners hitting the freaking lottery. They did not do any work on him. They didn't do like any kind of like backdoor scouting and knew that there was something there. They took a flyer on a former top prospect and it worked out and they got lucky. But true fans know that there is additions that needs to be made to the roster beyond those pieces. But as many, including myself, have feared, in this interview with KJR, Jerry Dipoto asserted that the championship pieces, I love how Chuck phrased this question, by the way. Like he referred to it as an aircraft carrier, the landing of the aircraft carrier type move, a championship type move, whether it be free agency or a trade. That move that many Mariners fans, including myself, think they need, that aircraft carrier type move that Chuck referred to, according to Jerry Dipoto, is indeed a full season of last year's midseason additions instead of an off-season splash. Take a listen.
It's not an unfair criticism, and what our expectation or hope is going into this year, that answer is a full season from Victor Robles, a full season from Randy Arozarena, another step forward for Julio Rodriguez, a rebound for J.P. Crawford. We're going to do it when the sum of the parts type mentality. You're probably not going to see a big splash. And we've never been shy about that our focus was on this group of players. And if I've ever expressed otherwise, I apologize for setting up false expectations.
Yeah, Jerry, unfortunately, you have led Mariners fans to believe that you were focusing on spending some money outside of this organization. We've got the freaking receipts, buddy. You can apologize all you want, and you could just turn around and say, oh, you know what? I screwed up and said the wrong thing in the past. Why then did you make these comments with the Seattle Times quoting you after the 2018 season? Here is a quote. Our goal was to set ourselves to be as flexible from an age, from a system, and from a payroll perspective as we could in that 2021 launch. Dipoto says Kikuchi and Seager will be the only players on our roster that are earning north of arbitration numbers. That gives us incredible spending power in the free agent market at a time when some of the best players of this generation might be available in free agency. Jerry Dipoto also went on after the 2021 season going into 2022, so essentially the 2021 off season, went on to say that their future spending power in Seattle was going to be pretty big.
It was always our plan, was to 2019-20 provide our players with extended auditions, give them opportunity to gain experience. We thought we would start to turn a corner right about now. And I think we did that. We achieved that goal, and now it's incumbent on us to go add where we can add and improve where we can improve. And that's not lost on us. And we'll visit every avenue to do that, whether it's the free agent market, it's the potential for trade, but we do have payroll flexibility, and we're going to use it to go out and make the team better.
But really, how many pieces have they added outside of the organization like that big final piece that you think would send them over the top? They've never done it. If that's Mitch Garver and nobody else, then the Mariners' approach is just completely wrong. And I am so scared of what Jerry Dipoto is going to think going forward that, listen, I like this group of players. I think that they're a good team. But Jerry Dipoto thinking that this team is a good team isn't good enough. This team needs to be a great team. And the Seattle Mariners of 2025 simply aren't that. And hearing these comments, and let me know what you think about these comments. I'm going to post some of these clips on Twitter and my reactions to them. But I am super frustrated hearing from Jerry Dipoto and hearing him say one thing years after saying the other. It's ridiculous. It's bass backwards. And as a Mariners fan that pays money, that buys these freaking jerseys that are authentic and way too expensive, it's frustrating. I hope that this season goes well, but maybe a little bit of it, a little bit in me wants Jerry Dipoto to fail and wants some of this roster to fall on their face, because hearing this guy being proven right, I mean, I want my team to win a World Series, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And the reasons that he's preaching, I just don't think they're correct as to why he thinks that this team is going to be more successful than an 85-win team, 86-win team. It's just not going to happen, in my opinion. And if you're going to double down on the same players that you did before and they don't work outside of a Rowdy Tellez solution on a minor league deal, what do you do? And that's where I'll leave it. That's where I'm going to leave it here on this episode of Bleav in Mariners. Next up, I really do want to get to the news about Mike Blowers not coming back to the broadcast booth in 2025. I apologize that I keep pushing that back, but just a lot to react to with this new Jerry Dipoto interview. We'll also look at the Mariners bullpen soon, and I'm going to dive into a theory that I've got about the Mariners offense that no one's really talking about. Make sure to give the podcast a 5-star rating and review, or subscribe to the channel. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube. And hey, if you know a former Seattle Mariners player, or you are a former Mariners player listening to the podcast, I'm looking for a former player to co-host this show with me. So hit me up on Twitter, on the air Jordan with an O, or hit me up on YouTube, which is Bleav in Mariners on YouTube, and we'll get in touch and try to figure something out. But thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Stay safe out there and keep those tridents up, Mariners fans. See you soon.